Greetings, traveler. It is a pleasure to see you. Yes, it's a little warmer than usual, but the wind is still blowing hard. Please, don't stand out there in the weather. You are more than welcome to enter my humble abode and share the fire with me.
This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill. The story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill. You stay in Wonderland. And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. Remember, all I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
Well, traveler, I've survived another week of work and I've made it to the weekend. I must say that now, even more than before, I have the impression that I'm staring at an empty highway and there is nothing stopping me from mashing that gas pedal to the floor and going as fast as I can towards my destiny. So now that the man cave is a little more organized, I have more time to think about things. And looking through my collection of paperwork, I found some notes that I wrote some years ago concerning the condition of the individual versus the collective. And I thought it was an appropriate subject to come back to and explore. Now, here is a man. This meme, yeah, you could call him a modern-day philosopher. Yes, George Carlin, excuse me. He was a bona fide badass motherfucker. And he spoke the truth and he didn't give a fuck. And he said something that's very true. He says, governments don't want well-informed, well-educated people capable of critical thinking. That is against their interests. They want obedient workers, people who are just smart enough to run the machines and do the paperwork, and just dumb enough to passively accept it. You think about it, that's absolutely true. You look at the state of today's culture, the way the matriarchy has things set up, and with the willing cooperation of the blue-pilled majority and those seeking political advantage. The elites, if you want to say that, you know, they want compliant drones. They don't want workers. You know, the actions of the collective don't consider the individual at all. You think anything done by an individual, especially if you ascribe to leftist philosophy, if it doesn't fit into that collective lockstep, You're shamed, you're ridiculed. Sometimes the punishment is public, sometimes it's private. Now, there are lots of collectives. And, it's not only the leftists that have them. Tradcons have it too, in the form of the church. Now, church is a little different. I remember from my time as a Mormon, seeing and actually experiencing some church discipline. It wasn't like being put in the stocks in front of everybody, out in front of the church. Be things like not being allowed to take the sacrament, their form of communion, or being disfellowshipped, which means you weren't allowed to teach, or even the ultimate punishment of being excommunicated. It's not a public execution. You're just no longer a part of the group. Now, I've seen, especially in Mormon culture, that, it's so insular that someone being excommunicated, sometimes it's pretty hard on them because they've lost everything. And this same sort of collective attitude can be seen in the political apparatus. Like in the Soviet Union, being a member of the Communist Party. Saddam Hussein's Iraq, you had to be a member of the Ba'ath Party. Even further back, you can go to Argentina and the Peronistas. If you are not a party member, advancement in your job, or sometimes even getting a decent job, is impossible. And also, you're automatically assigned a category as either not reliable or you're considered a spy. And it makes you wonder, why is that? Why is the collective so afraid of independent thought? Why is the collective so afraid of you discovering and using your value as an individual to make your life better? Now, I remember, things are slightly different today, but, even back in the day, if you talked about things that weren't mainstream, people would give you strange looks. Or if you actually came up with something that was against the popular narrative, it would immediately be labeled a conspiracy theory. As this meme says, you look at the chart, there's all these different types of aircraft, and almost all of them, the weather balloon, doesn't matter if it's a rocket plane, satellite, the bat plane. Let's see, looks like a B-1 bomber. Let's see, there's a B-2, the Enterprise, classic UFO. They're all considered weather balloons. And caption reads, "Never report anything strange you may have seen to the Air Force. They will misidentify it in a heartbeat, and then they will make you sign a letter swearing you saw nothing, or they will kill you." Ew. And if you think that's a little over the top, here's something for you to consider. After the Kennedy assassination, they had the Warren Commission, supposedly trying to get to the truth of what happened. Well, not only did they come up with a preposterous magic bullet theory, basically a high-powered rifle round hit a target, was deflected, hit another target, and deflected again. And not only that, if you look back, you can see that all the witnesses they called to testify are all dead now. Now, there are a couple who died through natural causes, but an awful lot more died of accidents. And you might say, well, accidents happen, but someone did a little calculation and they said that the odds of this particular group of people all dying in such a short time was actually astronomical. But if you bring it up, that's ridiculous. Our government would never do that to us. Yeah, right. So now, these days, we have all these groups that are forming ostensibly to ensure that their rights are protected. And we have the classic example of the Congressional Black Caucus. Now, I notice in this particular picture, there's spots for the white, Asian, and Latino caucuses, but they're blank. Seems that they don't exist. And the caption reads, "Oh, I see, but everyone else is racist, right?" But I've noticed that, and I'm black, so I can say this, some of the worst racists I've known are black people. And these are people in my own former family. There is a person of color named J.C. Watts. He was elected to Congress from Oklahoma. And I've seen him speak every now and then. He seems, reasonably intelligent and articulate, sounds like he's not gonna trip over his own tongue like I do, or say something incredibly stupid. But the Congressional Black Caucus refused to allow him to join. Makes you wonder why. Was he not dark enough? No. It turns out they didn't like him because he was a conservative. It's worth repeating. Oh, I see, but everyone else is racist, right? And especially these days, it seems like you can't say 3 words without triggering somebody. And, people's egos are so fragile these days because they have no spine. They don't have, well, they may have the mental capacity, but it's unused and twisted by people with a sinister agenda. And these dumbass kids don't even realize it's happening to them. So if you're there we go. But finally, you reach a point where you see all this stuff going on and you decide, no, that can't continue to go on. One of the founding fathers, Thomas Jefferson himself, said, "If a law is unjust, a man is not only right to disobey it, he is obligated to do so." And that doesn't mean you need to, do a little hockey mask reenactment and start putting 2 to the back of the head of everybody you see. No. Martin Luther King Jr. observed Gandhi's principle of nonviolent resistance. And that's what he did. The lunch counter sit-in is a classic example. Here's a black guy. You know, he's not dressed like a field hand. He's got on a suit and a tie and a hat, like everyone else did back in the day. And he's like, hey, all I want is a cup of coffee and a donut. You know, he's not standing on top of the lunch counter shouting. He's not getting in people's faces, calling them raggedy motherfuckers. He is just acting like any other customer. And still, these people were beaten, spit on, arrested. But, as Gandhi said, you know, that I'm mangling the quote, but, you know, they fight you harder and harder, but then you win. And that's what happened. And, you know, this happens to everyone. You know, here you are. You're trying to live out that blue-pilled existence. And you're encountering opposition. And I know myself, I've been right here more than once. One of the hardest decisions you'll ever face in life is choosing whether to walk away or try harder. Well, I did. No, I'd say the first 10 years or so of my marriage wasn't that bad, but after that, it was pretty much all downhill. But I kept trying harder. And despite all my efforts to fulfill that blue-pilled existence, I was kicked to the curb. So I had no choice but to walk away. Well, actually, I could have tried again, but it was easier to walk away. It was easier to walk away rather than subject myself to more torture. And especially after consuming the red pill, you find that making this choice is easier. Indeed, Lao Tzu said, new beginnings are often disguised as painful endings. And it's absolutely true in my case. That the ending of my marriage was painful, not in broken leg, intense, acute pain, but a low-level chronic ache that just didn't want to go away. Because you keep saying to yourself, what could I have done to make things better? But then as you're taking more red pills and that rage takes over, you realize it wasn't all your fault. You were stuck. You were responding to a program, trying to fulfill conditions that you thought were supposed to happen. But due to interference from the culture and other women, it wasn't going to happen. But you know that red pill rage does fade after time. And then when you get that clarity of thought, you know that it all wasn't your fault. In a lot of cases, it wasn't your fault at all. You were being manipulated by someone who didn't really care about you as a person, but considered you a disposable utility. And after that red pill rage fades, you realize that you have value. And you know, brothers, I've noticed more and more lately that there are people showing up and they are just some raggedy ass, shade throwing motherfuckers. And I've learned, doing my response videos, I've managed to calm my formless rage at being insulted into, well, let's see, rather than an out of control forest fire, it's a bunch of banked coals. You can, if you have a fire too high, you're gonna boil that beef stew dry. But if you put it on a slow simmer, it takes a while, but yes, everything cooks and it turns out great. Well, that's what I'm doing now. Now, when these little bitches show up, I give them an opinion, and now I don't bother to talk to them anymore. 'Cause it's not worth my time. They're not really motivating me enough to go through the trouble of a response video because they're not worth it. So, remind them, sir, if I am to be insulted, I must first value your opinion. If all you're doing is throwing shade and not saying a single constructive thing, then you're a little bitch. And I don't need to waste my time with you. Your steady diet of red pills exposes you to the truth. And indeed, in this meme from quickmeme.com, says, truth is like a lion. You don't have to defend it. Let it loose and it will defend itself. That is a quote from St. Augustine. And he's right. Once you know the truth, and not just you read it and you agree with it, but once you know the truth in your mind and in your heart, and it's confirmed from the infinite, nothing can knock you off your path. Now here's a little deal from some place called smallfiction.com. And I've noticed, I spent a little time on Twitter some years ago, and there are some people who will write a tiny story, something complete in 140 characters can't be easy, but this one is pretty good. Why do the townsfolk fear you, she said. Because I can do things they can't, the witch said. Like? Mind my own business, for one. Yes, indeed. You already realize if you're a man going your own way, you're not really taking the time to interfere with anyone else. You're too busy with your own radical self-actualization to mess around with anyone else. Now, that's not to mean you can't voluntarily associate with someone, but you know that you've got to take care of yourself. And if you're spending all your time up in someone else's business, your own is laying by the wayside being ignored. And we all know that's not a good look, because who's going to take care of you but you? This reminds me of a old science fiction story back in the day from Eric Frank Russell. It's called And Then There Were None. Giant battleship lands on a planet. This ship is over a mile long. And since the planet appears peaceful, all the senior officers debark first. He notes in the story that if it had been hostile, of course, it would have been the other way around with the privates going out first. So they go out into town, and it takes a while, but eventually they note that there's a really strange culture. Now, they don't know what the locals use for currency, so people will carry all kinds of things in their pockets. So one of the big deals, this guy has a little plaque. It says F-IW, just short for freedom. I won't. And another phrase they would say was MYOB, which is short for mind your own business. So it turns out this planet was settled by people who adopted most of the principles of Gandhi and made it into a worldwide culture. It was all cooperative. And this guy did an experiment. This kid's playing with the ball. The ball bounces over to the guy. He catches it. Kid comes over to get his ball. The guy says no. The kid doesn't cry, doesn't argue. He just turns away. It's like, wow. So he gives the ball back. So it's, being able to put someone on full ignore is a great weapon. Unlike a firearm or even a bladed weapon, if someone takes it away from you, they can use it against you. But how can they use being ignored against you? When you're not interacting with them, they have no power over you. And once you've got it down that you are responsible for yourself, and you really dig into your own mind to decide what's important, an amazing thing happens. When you get honest with yourself and start doing what you love and what makes you happy, your life literally slows down. You stop wishing for the weekend. You stop merely looking forward to special events. You begin to live in each moment, and you start feeling like a human being. You just ride the wave that is life with this feeling of contentment and joy. You move fluidly, steadily, calm and grateful. A veil is lifted and a whole new perspective is born. And I can tell you that this statement is absolutely true. It's like there are so many people that get upset because Monday is here and they've got to go back to work. And literally, I turn the corner on that shit. Mondays mean absolutely nothing to me anymore. There is nothing special about a Monday. Because as I've said before, when God's touched your soul and put your spirit at peace and your mind's right, it doesn't matter where your body is. Now, there have always been the rising generation that looked at the previous one and says, oh, y'all are fucked up as a football bat. I'm not gonna follow those old patterns. I'm gonna go do my own thing so I can discover myself. It's not a new phenomenon. There's always been rebellion against parental values. Like, you look at, now we know very little about it, but there was what was called the gay 90s. And of course, we know about the shock of World War I, and the response was the Roaring Twenties. Then there was the Depression in the 30s and World War II in the 40s. Those were two shocks to the system. And the new generation came back with the beatnik culture and eventually hippies. In the 70s, there was what was called the Me generation. And even in the 90s, we had the punk rockers who eventually morphed into goths. Now, all this, it's a cycle that's repeated itself in history. But there was always that stable cultural center that a lot of people came back to. In fact, this even happens with the Amish, who you would think are an incredibly stable culture. They have a tradition called Rumspringa. The kids go off to town, the party like it's 1999. A lot of them go back and decide, it's not really for them. But there are some that decide, no, I don't want that life. I want to do my own thing. A lot of them are disadvantaged because they literally know nothing about modern culture. But they do leave. And it wasn't until the 60s where there was an active rejection of the prevailing culture. I mean, nowadays, these poor kids, they don't have a stable cultural base to go back to if they feel what they're doing isn't satisfying. Their parents didn't have one either. I think all the hippies from the 60s, they're now the ones up there in the establishment in positions of power. And they abandoned things very early. So they're adrift, and their children are even worse. So what kind of approach to life do you have if all you know is the collective? You're vulnerable to people that are going to manipulate you for their own purposes. Now we're going way back for this meme. This is from the Egyptian Book of the Dead. Now, I don't remember who this deity is supposed to be. I think it's Anubis, but I can't remember for sure. All things are possible. Who you are is limited by who you think you are. And it's absolutely true. You have value as an individual. But we're hearing so much about teamwork and the collective. Now, in a work environment, of course, you can't do everything by yourself. You look at a modern vehicle assembly line. It's like, okay, your job is to install the engine. Okay. But you can't do it unless things are set up first. I mean, if someone's put the hood on at the wrong time, well, now it's in the way. If someone has forgotten to install support brackets, there's no place for the engine to sit. So, yes, teamwork is important, but it also needs a talented individual to do his own job. Now, during meetings at work, I have done what I call shout-outs, where I single out an individual and call them out for their achievements. I remember one young lady. She was fairly new on the job, and we were both working on the same terminal board in boxes, one on the front of the unit and one on the back. So I said, I better go check on her and see how she's doing. I was shocked. She was doing the job faster than me, and it looked better. So I made a point of calling her out at the meeting and saying, yes, you did a great job. Afterwards, she said she was embarrassed and don't do that again. I'm like, what? And it's weird because, with the leftists controlling the schools, unearned praise and participation trophies seems to be mandatory. Because we got to have an equality of outcomes. If you got an A and Chad, you got an A but Chad got an A plus, well, it must be because of white privilege. So now they're changing things. Pass-fail grades that don't really show if you learn something. Giving you bonus points for attendance. Or that not necessarily that your homework is correct, but that you even turned it in. TFM noted that. It says, that girls are doing better than boys at school. And he says, you peek behind the curtain. It's because they're rewarding girls for things that they are naturally better at than the boys. So of course, on paper, they're going to look better. It used to be your only score that you got was from the test. And boys are better at test taking than girls. So they've manipulated the system to make women look better. And now they say, yeah, see, here's proof. Y'all some lying motherfuckers. And we know leftists have no understanding of business. It's they think making a profit is evil. Because that's what they've heard all through school. And with the ridiculous entitlement attitude they have, it's no wonder they get into the business world and suddenly they're melting like a snowflake in the Sahara because the real world has nothing to do with what they've been taught. But you are an individual and you have value. But that doesn't mean that you can't work with other people. Here is a classic example of independent people working together. How powerful are we when truly organized? Let's take the case of the CB radio issue back in the 70s as an example of the power of the people. The FCC was trying to get all truckers to get a license for using CBs. The truckers flat out refused and simply did not volunteer to get the license that they were trying to enforce. United together, the truckers won. Now, they've modified the rules slightly. I know if you're into ham radio, those are higher power units and you do need a license for. But a regular CB radio with low power, people were actively driving around from the government with vans, scoping for signals, and trying to catch people you know, people would be given fines for operating illegal equipment because they didn't have a license. But governments are more vulnerable than people think. They can collapse in an instant when consent is withdrawn. You think about it, that's what we've done. We've walked away. We've withdrawn from participating in the matriarchy. A man with common sense doesn't participate in his own destruction. And we know the founding fathers themselves said that governments derive their power from the consent of the governed. And besides, no one's responsible for you but you. That it doesn't imply that you shouldn't seek help when you feel you need it. Nor should you ignore someone else who needs help. But it should be voluntary, not compulsory. I mean, how can a faceless bureaucrat in Washington, looking at his 1,000-page rule book, know what's applicable to me here? They don't. I saw another meme that's pretty applicable. The office person is looking in the book, and the caption said, "Well, I have no idea what you're doing, but this book says you're wrong." A truly talented individual shouldn't have to wait for a bureaucrat's permission to do anything. Because a bureaucrat is nothing but a political parasite, draining your tax money and making himself look important by holding his hand out and saying, if you don't do what I say, when I say it, you're getting the pimp hand and there's nothing you can do about it. But really? I mean, imagine if today's bureaucracy was around in the pioneer days. We might have never gotten across the plains if we had to wait for environmental impact studies and things like that. So, brothers, remember, yes, you as a single individual can be overwhelmed and neutralized. But just like my man here, now I gotta admit I still have not watched V for Vendetta. But, yes. Doesn't matter who you are. Small acts when multiplied by millions of people can transform the world. And we know our walking away is having an effect. We know the matriarchy is getting scared. But we need to stand firm, brothers, because we know we're doing the right thing. As a unique individual, you already have God-given talent. Along with the skills and experience you bring to the table, you have a solid foundation to fulfill your karma. Now that you don't have interference from others, you can set yourself up for success. Get organized and take yourself out of a comfort zone. And once your feet are firmly on the path to self-actualization, it is easier for you to help other travelers along the way. And believe me, nothing makes you check yourself and make sure you understand what you know than when you have to teach it to someone else. As I've said before, when one teaches, two learn. And that power is already within you, brothers. Studies have shown that we only use 10 to 15% of our brain capacity. I can't remember what the movie was. It was about the woman who was a drug mule. And they actually did surgery and put these packages loaded with pills into her abdomen. Well, one of them ruptured. And her body was flooded with these pills. And they had the effect of boosting the amount of brain area she could actively access. And it was like fascinating. Now I've heard that there are some drugs currently on the market that can do that. I'm surprised that the elites haven't suppressed it, because you can't have the drones suddenly waking up and realizing they can do things on their own. No, shocking. Now, as you continue on your path, you realize that the power to change and to grow comes from inside, and it comes from above. You also know that there is more than one way to learn. Our souls do not speak human language. They communicate to us through symbols, metaphors, visions, poetry, deep feelings, and everyday magic. Indeed. I remember I did okay in a regular school environment, and it was a bit of a surprise when I was in the Marines and going to A school that suddenly there was no regular classroom. It was all individual instruction. You got the workbook and you sat there in your little cubicle, and when you felt you were ready, you went to take the test yourself. Now, of course, they had to throw a swerve. You were not allowed to continue to the next section of coursework unless you got 100 on the test. Yes, really. There was a friend of mine who reached that point. He got one question wrong on the test. Okay, so well, consulted, said, yeah, you know what you're doing. Okay, take the test again. They said he got it wrong again. Went to a review board, kicked him out of the program. Later, they found out there was a computer error. The computer was scoring the test wrong. But of course, being the military, they couldn't admit that they made a mistake. They wouldn't let him back in the program. Ain't that some shit? But now, it was a surprise for me to see that I could actually thrive in that environment. Because it was a shock to me when I got out of high school and went to college that, there was nobody pushing you. They didn't care. They already got your tuition money. If you want to show up, you don't want to show up, so what? But now, I've learned how to motivate myself. And especially when you're a man going your own way, you become more sensitive to spiritual influences. Now, of course, the tradcons say that they're sensitive to spiritual influences, but it's all in a confined structure. And and I've seen it if you claim to have a spiritual experience, but it's not where some authority figure says it should happen, they don't like it. But it does take time and practice to develop this discernment. But just like this meme from Fight for Life says, life is a series of thousands of tiny miracles. Notice them. Which reminds me, I talked about language a bit before. I wanted to explain to you my view of karma. I know the popular definition of karma is a vindictive force that's gonna give you the pimp hand. You've been fucking with somebody, and suddenly the same thing happens to you. But I sort of use fulfilling my karma as doing things in harmony with a spiritual path, something that brings you joy and fulfillment. And so when I say fulfilling my karma, that's what I mean. So here you are on your path, and just for the sake of argument, let's say that things really are as the Scientologists say, and that your spirit is going to recycle into another physical manifestation. Well, who knows what that's going to be? Now, you may wonder what you're looking at here, but look close. You may see a little more than you bargained for. A casual glance would say, yes, this is just trees, but yes, there is more. Someone recently told me about a place, I believe in Germany, called the Haunted Forest, where they buried dead people, and now they claim that the forest is haunted because their souls are trapped in the trees. Well, who knows if that is true? But perhaps they're not trapped. I have a fictional example of this. It is concerning the stunt double who's the avatar of my cover artist. And the funny part was I was extremely churchy at the time, and she's a Wiccan. And it was a challenge for me to suppress my tradcon instincts and be able to write about something from what I considered her perspective. So, her character has a lot of empathy. And she's had sort of a shock to the system. She's trying to calm herself. And she's thinking, oh, to be a rose. Experiencing joy in the presence of sunlight. Feeling delicious tastes coming from fertile, rich soil. Growing and feeling an expansion of awareness. Not acting or even thinking, just being. It's like, wow, maybe you were Billy Badass in your last cycle, and this cycle you're just hanging out. Just enjoying being there. But, small part of me thinks, maybe if Homo rationalis continues to develop, maybe this isn't just random chance. Maybe this is something you did on purpose. Maybe this is, as ascended humans, maybe this is our manifest destiny. Why not? The infinite potential is in our grasp. And now, without interference, we are free to develop that. There is no group that can come up to you and tell you you're as fucked up as a football bat when you know your potential and you are succeeding in unlocking the infinite power that is within you with help from the infinite. Ah, traveler. It has been quite enjoyable having you visit with me. And I certainly hope I've given you something to think about as you continue on your journey. I know that I have infinite potential and value as an individual who is awake, unafraid, and unbreakable. And we can see it, that there's all kinds of people that are telling us we're all fucked up and that we don't have a clue what we're doing. You know, people even trying to give the pimp hand to heavy hitters, people we know are bona fide. Right? We know better. It's like that, you know, I'm an old guy. This definitely ain't my first rodeo. And red pill wisdom is helping me to fulfill my potential as a bona fide badass motherfucker. And it will help you too. So, do not doubt your value as an individual. I have no doubts that you can succeed at whatever you want to do. May take time, may take effort, but yes, the outcome is well worth the time and effort you spend. Because when you're improving yourself, you are also improving everyone around you. You know someone's gonna say, wow, that guy was divorced. He lost everything, but he still has nothing, but why does he have a smile? Well, my brother, you come on over here. Bring a glass of water, and I want you to take this red pill. Yeah, buddy. So, remember, no one can stop you from achieving your best. And as you continue your journey, remember, I still say some of the best days of your life haven't happened yet.